So now let's get into a bit. Uh, let's get into things that are a bit cooler, right? So say you wanted to implement dragging, so you wanted this object to drag. NOLOH has an extensive system of shifts. Okay, so you see, I can do this shift. So every object has a shift, which is unrealistic. I can do shift something. Okay, so what a shift is, when I drag the object, is considered a shift, and I can shift anything. So I can say shift location, or I can say shift left, shift top, shift width, whatever. So let's say shift location this. So, and I refresh now, and I drag these objects, you'll see that they'll be able to drag themselves, right? But I could have also said, instead of shift location, I could have said shift width. So I'll refresh here, and you see that now when I drag it, I can shift the width, okay? Furthermore, I can have shifted something else. So I can say this shifts will shift the width of this, and I can say that it'll also shift the width of color box. So when I refresh, I can now shift this, and you'll see that the color box, it changes its width for all these objects as I shift the object. But there's also something called shift width. So what I can actually say is color box shifts will shift its width with this. So notice that now when I refresh and I drag, it's the same thing. But what did I say here? I said the color box shifts with something else. So you can easily see how you could now have an advanced system of chaining shifts. So when something else shifts, I can shift, and when I shift, something else can shift, all without having one thing explicitly shift something else. So you can shift with something else. Okay? And I'll just change this to shift its location. And so when I shift its location, it'll shift its location. But also note that the width didn't shift. But that's because NOLOH has a lock essentially. So you can say that when I'm shifting width, by default I'll only shift with something else's width. But I can pass in shift location, and what it'll say is I can shift my width with something else's location. So you'll notice that now as I drag it, it is shifting the, so you'll see here where I go back, you'll see that it's shifting the width. So you can see how you're not confined. You can say that I want to shift my width with something else. So you can see very quickly I can have complex behaviors. Okay? So now let me demonstrate some animation, right? So we already said that that object is going to be able to drag, for example. But we're going to say now that this panel, so we're going to make this panel, use local variable, so we're going to say panel shifts equal shift location with something. So this controls whatever I currently am minus 1. Okay? Now we want to do this for everything except for the first one. So we'll say if I is greater than 0. Okay? And now, okay, so what we can now say, and what you see here, is that if I refresh and I drag this, all of the panels are now shifting together. So you see how very easily you can have chaining with something shifting with something else. See how I'm dragging and they're chaining together. Similarly, if I were to just add a new button, so this controls add new button, clicky, we'll just give it a left of 200. And we can also chain. So NOLOH offers chaining. You can chain from your objects if you wanted. You would actually do cast to continual chaining, but there's a whole document in our documentation called cascading that explains it. I'm just going to do add new button. Then I can just do click equals new server event. And there's a built-in animate class. And since it's static, I can do animate. I'm going to do animate the left of this controls 0 to 1,000, right? So I have a new button clicky. When I click on it, it'll animate the left of this one to 1,000. Let's see what happens. Clicky, and it's 1,000. But notice, because everything else shifted with, they all shifted. Okay, so you can see very easily how shifts are very powerful.